Alrighty, I think let's just get this thing started. I know that there's going to be some students that come and trickle in, and I also know that there's plenty of other student athletes who are super busy tonight. You know, it's a Monday night, lots of homework probably being dished out tonight. But I'm going to record this for everyone who's unable to attend, and then I'll send it out to the rest of the club members, and I'm sure they're going to enjoy this one as well. Let's just get into it. Let's see.
Great. Can everybody hear us? The Chris Bakers and the people here who are on my screen?
Yeah, I think they can. I think everyone can hear us. You guys see my screen now?
Yep, I see it.
Alrighty. So thanks for everyone for coming out. This week we have a special guest speaker, Rick Cronk. I'll get a little bit more into who Rick is and everything a little bit later. But first off, for everyone who's new to the club, I'm just going to drop our link to sign up in the chat, which is, oh, I'm having a little Zoom technical difficulties here. Let's see. Alrighty, here's that. So, and everyone make sure to follow our social media to keep up to date with everything that we're doing. It's just safe at Berkeley. As you can see, we're growing pretty quickly, and we hope that we'll have tons of more members by the time we have our next meeting. So the question of the day, I always like to pose a question. I think this is super relevant, especially to this year. There's been a ton of IPOs, as I mentioned in one of our prior meetings, initial public offerings. And I want to ask you, anyone who knows the answer, what is the difference between an IPO and a direct listing? If anyone knows, feel free to speak up. And if not, we'll just give it about 30 seconds or so. Also, feel free to put it in the chat. Alrighty, let's move on. So the answer, all right, Tamir, IPOs and shares are. Yes, that is partially correct. Yeah, that's correct. An IPO is an initial public offering when new shares are created. So there's already shares that have been issued to private investors and early founders, and then it's underwritten by companies like Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, et cetera, and then sold to the general public, like Tamir said. Whereas a direct listing is when there's no new shares created, there's only the existing shares, and they're sold with no underwriters. So this week, correct me anyone if I'm wrong, but I believe that Coinbase was a direct listing as opposed to an IPO. That was super huge, and there's been a ton of IPOs this year, which has led to some speculation in the markets. We'll see what happens there in the coming weeks. But yeah, so last meeting's link can be found. Oh, shoot. Right here. And I'm going to drop it in the chat for everyone who is. Oh, shoot, that's me. Here's that. So there's that for anyone who is interested. In our last meeting, we had another Cal alumni, Leland Faust, come out and speak with us. So yeah, up next. Oh my gosh. Up next, I just want to give an update on the executive board and team representatives. So our club is growing very fast, and I wanted to make sure that there's not a heavily board dominant club. So I want to take this very, very slow. In addition to that, I was working out some kinks in the prior weeks with compliance and making sure that I got vetted and everything, and make sure that I was able to come teach you guys all about financial education, and that I was, sharing like a good message, and that there was any sort of like, speculation like, oh, like I'm telling you guys to do this with your money, etc. And so due to that, they told me to hold off for a little while on adding more board members. However, now that I'm fully vetted with them, I can start moving on in the process, and I can't wait to read all of your guys' apps and get more people on board and get more teams to be participating in this club. Again, for anyone who hasn't been able to sign up yet, the link to sign up is in the chat. That is that right here. And in this coming week, I hope to start doing some sort of interviews, etc. All right, so next is headshots. We want to see all of your lovely faces on our Instagram. You guys might have seen this post that we posted last week. We just want to make sure that all of our members who are interested in being on our Instagram, we can share their headshots. So if you guys would be interested in being featured on our Instagram potentially, feel free to send all of your headshots to our Instagram. Just send us a direct message, and who knows, you might see yourself on our next Instagram post. Finally, this is the last announcement I'm going to make about this before the end of semester. There is a $25 gift card again up for grabs for anyone who can win this Investopedia game. Now the link to it is in the chat. Basically what we're doing is that everyone gets $1 million to start off with, and it's a paper trading completely, like you don't have to invest any of your own money, etc. And you can put this fake money into the stock market and see how you would do. I'm going to give a little update on the current leaderboard. As you can see, I'm in last place. I guess I made too many risky trades or something like that. But congratulations to Trevor. He's ahead currently, and it's going to end around the end of the month. I'm probably just going to like shoot whoever the winner is a text or email on the last day of school or whenever our last meeting is. And yeah, we'll go from there. I'm hoping to do one of these competitions each semester, and it's been super fun so far. There's been plenty of volatility in the markets, and plenty of opportunities for people to get ahead. Clearly not me though. So moving on, the topic of the week that we're going to be talking about is a Roth IRA. So for anyone who doesn't know what a Roth IRA is, it's basically a tax sheltered savings / retirement account. Basically all the money that you put into this is account is tax-free, or that is post paying taxes, and then the investment income that you make is tax-free, and all of the capital gains tax is tax-free. And the max annual contribution could have changed, but when I learned about this in school, there was a $6,000 annual cap on this. And note that it is not taxed when withdrawn from retirement. And the kicker to this whole thing is, one, that all the money you put into it has to already be taxed from basically your regular income source, job, etc. But you're only able to touch this after age 59 and a half, and if you do withdraw prior, there are penalties to that. There's a 10% penalty. And the reason why you should be doing this is it's one of the greatest ways to save for retirement. It harnesses the power of compounding interest, like we talked about in one of our prior meetings. And then since most of the money you already are putting into most of your investment accounts is already taxed, it's a great loophole if you want to specifically save for retirement. Again, warning, if you do put money in and pull it out, there is a penalty and you have to pay taxes on it. However, there's a couple loopholes that I learned about. If you do it right, you can evade the penalty, and if you need money, you can take it out for these certain instances. If there's unreimbursed medical expenses, health insurance premiums while you're unemployed, permanent disability, higher education expenses, that's right, up to a certain dollar amount, you can pull out money for your own student loans, your spouse's student loans, or sending your kids to college. If you inherit another IRA, If you plan to build or rebuild a house, you can pull up to $10,000 from this, all tax-free. And then there's a bunch of different little laws that you can also, that are also way over my head. One of them is the SEPP, substantial equal periodic payments. And then you can, to fulfill an IRS levy, if you have unpaid taxes, you can also pull that money from the Roth IRA. And or if you're called to active duty, you're able to pull from this Roth IRA. For anyone who has any more questions about this and this retirement account, feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to direct you guys to some other resources, but it's something that everyone should consider, and start investing early and start saving for retirement. Who knows, could be right around the corner if you do it right. So without further ado, I thought we would get on to our guest speaker, Rick Cronk. He's a former Cal men's water polo alumni, Haas School of Business graduate, went to grad school at Harvard, and is the former president of Dreyer's Ice Cream and the former president of the Boy Scouts America. Without further ado, Mr. Cronk, if you just be able to give you a little bit of an introduction on yourself. And then I was thinking that we could open it up to Q&A for all the athletes that are here. I have some questions prepared for you as well. I'm sure everyone would love to hear your insights and anything that you'd be able to share with us.
All right, Kyle. Well, this was your idea. I'm delighted to be here. I really look at this moment from your point of view, or I look at what I recalled in 1965 and 66, and what I recalled strongly when I was precisely your age, roughly. And I was very anxious. Early on, I knew that I was anxious to get out into the business world, and I wanted to, the short of it is I wanted to own a company, but there's a lot, what does owning a company mean, and how do you raise the money, and how do you really get there? But as opposed to working for somebody else, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I was really anxious to create an environment, a business environment that was unique. And I was anxious to do that. And there were several trips along the road before that, started to reach reality through our acquisition of Dreyer's Ice Cream. But it was fun. It was really fun. And the most important learning experience in all of that at Dreyer's, and we used it immensely. I can share with you some of the ways that we use this, but we were just focused on the character of the people involved and the culture of the organization that we created and worked together with. We hired the very best people we could possibly find. I mean, when we started the company, we may have my partner and I, Gary Rogers, who passed away 3 years ago, but when we bought Dreyer's, there were about 25 employees. It was a very small company. And as we started to hire people from that moment on, we really worked hard at it. I mean, we interviewed people at some length. We wanted bright people. We wanted people who had enthusiasm and brought enthusiasm to what we were doing every day. We wanted them to own their jobs. We kept using that phrase, the phrase, I can make a difference. We wanted people to work at Dreyer's Ice Cream, work at our company because they could be proud of it, and we wanted them to own their job. And so that culture that really embraced everybody in the company. If you worked at Dreyer's Grand Ice Cream and you weren't in the center of that culture and working at that level of activity and enthusiasm, you really did yourself a favor to go find a different job. So that culture was really, really, really strong, and it just grew like crazy. And it was interesting that here this little tiny ice cream company had been around for 50 years, but they were only selling ice cream, for most of that time in the East Bay, and with one truck going over to San Francisco. And we became aware of the fact that Dreyer's Ice Cream may be sold. The owner of the company at the time, was struggling, and he let the word out, let the word be known that he'd be willing to, buy the company. And that caused us to go and introduce ourselves to him. His offices were on College Avenue, so it was easy to do. And Gary finally said to him, we might be interested in buying the company. What's your goal in that regard if you were to sell a company? And he said, the one thing I've always wanted to do, and he was probably 65 at the time, maybe a little older. He said, the one thing I've always wanted to do is to be able to say to my wife and kids, we are, after taxes, after all other imaginable expenses, I'm worth $1 million. And so we said, we would be happy to make you worth $1 million. And that's how we bought the company. I mean, we didn't have $1 million, but that led to our ability to go out and find that money. And instead of starting something, from the back of a piece of paper and inventing a company and inventing a brand and all that stuff, that work had already been done. And not only had the company been around for a long time, but Dreyer's ice cream, or Edie's Grand Ice Cream, was world class. The quality was world class. I mean, if you had taste tests, nobody in America really. I'm not. There are a couple, companies that might have been considered of similar quality, but it was just unbelievable. And so here we were buying a company that had been around for a long time. We didn't have to invent anything. We just had to do a better job of execution. And that was fun. And we talked to our employees about respect for the individual, respect for themselves, respect for the company, respect for their customers. We talked about hiring smart, which they were a part of. We wanted people to own their jobs and really own your job. We want you to enjoy it, or go find something else to do. Life's too short. I almost talked Gary into allowing us to do this, but we talked for a long time about the upside down organization, drawing the organization chart at Dreyer. So Gary and I were at the very bottom, and our VPs of marketing and VPs of sales and other VPs were near the bottom. And at the very, very top of that upside down organization, we stole it from the big clothing company, starts with an N, Nordstrom. I phoned Jim Nordstrom and asked him if he'd mind if we used it. And he said that would be fine. And he came and actually joined us and talked to us at a company meeting once. But so we took the Nordstrom upside down organization, put all of us, quote unquote, important people at the very bottom. And at the very top, they were the people who made our ice cream in the plants. They were our route salesmen who delivered the ice cream in the stores. There were, people who answered phone calls and messages. It was the people that really had the opportunity to make a difference at Dreyer's Ice Cream that were most important to the company. And that worked, and that people cared about that. I used to often suggest to our employees that what I really hoped that they would do with some frequency was to be able to go home from work, sit down with their husband or wife and children and say, guess what I did today? I had a moment of victory. And so enough of that, but the culture of the organization and the character of the people is what made this little ice cream company in 20 years the biggest ice cream company in America. And it was really exciting.
Wow, it's a great story.
And I had nothing to do with it. I was at the bottom of this little organization chart.
Yeah, so I guess you talked about like that you were at the bottom of it. I guess how did you instill that type of culture in Dreyer's, I guess? Like, how were you able to run a company with you working at the bottom? Like, what did you have to tell your employees, I guess?
Well, I don't want to get carried away with, the people at the bottom were pretty damn important. But the way we communicated that was, again, embracing people with why they were there and why we were there together as a team. I could send you a whole bunch of these. These are all messed up, but we had these grooves pamphlets, little tiny pamphlets with 8 things that are inside of them that focus on hiring smart, respect for the individual, ownership of your job, the upside down organization. We had this little thing, and this was just sort of in everybody's pocket and purse and whatever. It was just and it was around forever, and it's so small, but it was sort of the fundamental beginning of why we were doing what we were doing, and to get people to focus on I can make a difference had an enormous influence. I mean, I remember going into grocery stores with primarily men, but we finally had some women that wanted to be, working as, distributing ice cream from our warehouse to the individual grocery stores. That was one of the unique things about Dreyer's. We were basically the only company in America who refused to sell to a grocer through their warehouse, selling ice cream to, say, Safeway's warehouse, and then having Safeway deliver it to the grocery stores on their big trucks 3 times a week. Understandably, Safeway didn't want a whole bunch of ice cream companies and other suppliers filling their parking lot with trucks all the time. So I can understand why they preferred that, we sell our ice cream to them through their warehouse. But we didn't want to do that because we lost flavor selection. We lost a variety of flavor sizes. Some neighborhoods, if you have lots and lots and lots of parents and not too many kids, you want nothing but pints, little tiny pints. And if you're in neighborhoods with lots and lots and lots of kids, you want half gallons. They're just not interested in little tiny pints. And so to be able to adjust and focus that flavor selection and those pint sizes, we had much more control over that by building it, making the ice cream in our plant and delivering it from our plant 3 or 4 times a day with our route salesmen or women salesmen directly to every store. And I remember, driving with route salesmen when I could afford the time to do it, but it was really fun to do. And I'd go into a grocery store, with a route salesman and watch he or she do their job. And then my message to them was always, by the way, I want you to know that you own this job. This grocery store is your store, and you should decide what size flavors they have, pints, quarts, or half gallons, and you should decide what flavors they want. These are your decisions. You don't have to ask anybody back at the office or in the plant or whatever. You are in charge of this business. And that had a lot to do, again, with the culture of the organization. And so it was fun. We had a ball.
Wow. That's awesome. That's awesome. Thanks for that little bit of a introduction on your background and everything. If anyone has any questions at all, feel free to shoot away. I have a little more in a little bit, but if anyone wants to cut in, feel free. Yeah, Elizabeth.
I was just wondering, you had talked about like when you first got bought the company that you wanted to give them like the $1 million, but so how did you kind of fund that? And also like what went into your decision in the first place to try and buy the company?
Well, my partner, Gary Rogers, and we'd actually been in the restaurant business for 5 years, and we had 5 restaurants, 3 in the Bay Area, 1 in Texas, and 1 in Southern California. And that was fun and it was great and whatever, but it wasn't going to go anywhere. And so, that's what motivated us to go find a company to buy that had already been around and was successful. That was it. The idea of how do you raise $1 million, we had to buy it, the company from them. We didn't want to go to work for them. We wanted to buy the business. And so that led us to some friends of ours in the investment banking business in San Francisco that right away were happy, and I forget what the terms were, and it had a half-life expectancy of about 5 or 6 or 7 years, but they loaned us $1 million. And in fact, they ended up becoming a very small ownership, joint venture partner in the company. And they were a source of capital that we needed during the first 5 years as we were getting bigger and bigger. So we told Ken Cook that we'd find $1 million, and we got on the telephone and we called these guys. And we thought that it was going to be relatively easier than you might normally expect, because once again, here was a business that was very successful. As small as it was high end, and it just had enormous opportunity in front of it. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but.
Yeah, no, definitely. Also, just thanks for coming. It's been really interesting to hear your stories and everything.
I love UC Berkeley.
Yeah, Garrett, fire away.
Hey, Rick, thanks for coming on. I'm Garrett. I play baseball at Berkeley here because Harvard turned me down. Yeah, my question to you is you guys obviously had a hiring process, and would you look for athletes to hire? Like, what's some things to say, or I don't know. Do you have anything on that topic?
I don't remember. I mean, I'm sure I just can't recall. I'm sure we obviously put together Gary and I put together a piece, 3 or 4 pages of here's Dreyer's and here's what we're looking for. And we included in that, our focus on the culture, the character of the people and the culture. Because if people weren't interested or were frightened by that, or thought we were full of what and weren't interested, that find something else to do. It's a big world. So what it did lead us to is a pretty serious interviewing process. We preferred hiring younger people. We were young in those days anyway. So we were interested in hiring younger people, and we were interested in hiring people who may have had some experience. Would have been nice, but that wasn't necessarily important. But we were in the interviewing process. We did ask them, to write some materials for us, and we asked them to give us the names of some people we could talk to. So we dove into the deep end of the pool, if you will, during that interviewing process to be sure that we got good people. You never knew whether they didn't have to be a genius. I don't know how you can tell who is a genius, but what they really were, obviously, were happy, enthusiastic, caring folks, and it really worked. It was the people when I left Dreyer's, we had something like, I don't know, 110 people who had worked for us for 20 years plus. I mean, we had people that worked there forever, whether they were driving a truck or running the East Coast.
And they were all millionaires.
No, I'm not sure, Garrett, if that did it or not, but.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. That helped a lot. Yeah, I don't know a lot of geniuses other than Kyle, so that helps my point there.
Tamir, do you have a question?
Yeah. Hi, Rick. Thanks for coming. Tamir, I'm on the water polo team here. I'm a senior. Yeah, go Bears.
Bears.
And my question to you was just, what was your first job out of college? How did you get it, and how do you think it affected the rest of your career going forward?
I went to work for my very first job out of Berkeley was I actually went to law school for 1 year and realized that was a mistake for everybody. Brutal. And so I went to work for an investment company in San Francisco, Eastman Dillon Union Securities Company, and it was a neat experience. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it, and I learned a lot about the investment business. It was a great learning experience, not just of the company, but of the business world, and borrowing money or looking for money, and looking at how you assess people's strengths. So, I mean, I would recommend that for somebody if you wanted to get into the investment world and just keep your eyes and ears open, and your mouth shut for a couple of years. Your learning curve is very steep. It's really cool. It's very cool. I do remember when this one experience led me to realize I wanted to work for myself as much as I enjoyed Eastman Dillon. But my wife and I had two of our three boys at the time, and the oldest one was already playing soccer, and I was a soccer coach for 25 years. And we lived in Moraga, and I wanted to be there, at school by 3:15 to, 2 days a week at least, not Saturdays, but two work days to coach them in soccer. And so after having worked at this company in San Francisco for 2 years, I started to leave at about 2:45 to go home. And I'd get back in the office every morning. I was in the office at 6 in the morning anyway. You had to be there pre-market or close to it. So the manager of the San Francisco office was a great guy, very pleasant guy. Called me into his office, surrounded by glass. As soon as he shut the door, I knew this was not going to be a good 15 minutes. And he said, by the way, several people in the office have been observing or noticing that you tend to leave the office early, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and you're leaving early in the afternoon. And I just got to tell you, you can't do that. We expect you to be here, till 4:30 or 5. And I know you work a long day, but that's what we expect. And I said, well, the reason I'm leaving early on Tuesday and Thursdays is my oldest son is playing soccer, not water polo. Playing soccer, I'm his coach, and we're a very good team, and we're having a ball, and that's important to me. It's important to me and my wife and family, and I really would like to continue to do that. And the guy said, well, he said, figure out how long this season is or how you can gently stop doing this. But I think over the next, 2 or 3 or 4 months, you need to not leave early on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I was driving in the car with Gary Rogers, my partner. He worked in San Francisco too. And we were driving the next morning, and I said, I had this meeting with the office manager, the vice president of something. And guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to leave. And I want to find a business where I can work for myself. And that as great as that business experience was, which was a learning experience, it was very valuable, very important. But that led me to realize I don't know how successful it'll be or not, but I need to work for myself. And I'd worked in the restaurant business a little bit at Cal, making a little bit of money. So I went to work for a company in Lafayette that was where we live now. Had a very, very good restaurant, and they were out of a firm in Marin County that had about 40 restaurants, and they hired me. They needed an assistant manager badly with some experience, which I had. And I said, I wasn't sure how long I'd be here, but I would love to do it. I'll jump in. I'll just work my tail off. And that led me to open up I went to Gary and said, Gary said, if we're gonna get in the restaurant business, let's not do it one at a time. Let's raise the kind of money and let's understand how we can own 5 restaurants over time. And so that led us to building our first restaurant in Orinda, California, which was a huge success. Didn't serve lunch, but dinner only, but a huge success. Everybody in the restaurant was from Cal. Everybody was, waiters, waitresses, most of the chefs, everybody was from Cal. And that led to, about 5 years in the restaurant business. And then the discovery that there's this little ice cream company called Dreyer, which might even be more interesting. So.
Then just quick follow-up. Why ice cream? Did you know anything about the business, or you just kind of thought I'll figure it out as I go? Or
we decided specifically, I think I mentioned this, we wanted to hire an established company. We wanted to buy an established company. We had already been through the learning experience of starting your own. We started our own restaurants. So we'd already done that. So we wanted to buy an established company, that was at least reasonably successful, but it was real. And so that's when Gary and I started to talk to everybody that we knew in the ice cream business. I mean, not the ice cream business. Everybody that we knew in the restaurant business, not the restaurant business, I'm sorry. Everybody that we knew in the business world, every banker, everybody who might be plugged into knowing of some business some reasonably successful business that might be for sale. And it didn't really matter. We wanted to be in the San Francisco Bay Area, preferably for obvious reasons. And so we talked to every banker, every insurance person, everybody. And this one guy, a friend of ours in San Francisco, happened upon the fact that the owner of Dreyer's had come to them and asked them for a loan of $1.5 million or whatever, $1 million. And this guy, and this was a fellow in a bank, and Wells Fargo, and he was aware that Ken Cook had come to Wells Fargo asking them for the money, the loan. And he knew that Wells Fargo wasn't going to honor that. And so he said, he said to Gary and Rick, if I were you, I'd go knock on the door of Ken Cook at Dreyer's Ice Cream. Wow. So we let other people do our shopping for us, and it worked.
Awesome.
Fun.
Thank you.
Welcome. Go Bears.
Great questions, guys. I had a couple come to me in the chat. When you decided to sell your business, Rick, to Nestle, what was important about trying to maintain that culture? And then if so, how long did you stay on once you sold it to them?
That's a very nice, simple question that has a long answer to it.
Maybe if you could shorten it. I don't want to take up too much of your time.
The first thing is we didn't want to sell Dreyer's to Nestle. We had no interest in Nestle whatsoever. What was interesting was that Nestle owned a bunch of ice cream businesses in America, and Unilever owned a bunch of ice cream businesses in America. And so just as Gary and I, as our business began to grow, especially when we were successful enough very quickly in 6 months in expanding our business in the San Francisco Bay Area. And that moved us up to Sacramento, and that was easy. And then it moved us up to Seattle, and then down to LA, and all that stuff started to work. It was really fun. It was very good. But very quickly, you didn't have to be a genius to become aware of who Unilever and who Nestle was in the world of ice cream. It was apparent. And Nestle had an office down in San Jose, the owner of which, not the manager of which I had known for some time, because he originally lived in the Lafayette, Orinda, Moraga area. I forget the exact year, about three or 4 years after we bought Dreyer's and we're starting to expand, he phoned me and asked if he could have lunch with Gary and myself. And I knew this guy pretty well. And I said, absolutely not. You got to be kidding. We don't want to have lunch with you. And I knew this guy right away, well enough for him to recognize the quote unquote ugly humor. Anyway, so Gary and I talked about that, and we talked to our attorney, and at the attorney's suggestion, we phoned them. And so this was the first step forward that lasted 15 years before they ended up buying us. And what they bought was small. But anyway, the attorney suggested that we say, yes, we'd be happy to chat with you, but if you want to have an honest conversation, we'd ask that you would sign a 2-year standstill where you would never try to offer, to buy ice cream. I forget the legalese, but you'd never, come after us. You'd never try to buy the company, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can call us, you can chat with us or whatever, but we want a 10-year standstill, to keep them away. And we, well, I guess that was it. And then, and that allowed us a lot of time to talk about it and think about it and talk to attorneys and whatever. At the end of that 2-year period, they wanted to chat with us again. And we said, look, we're having a ball. We're having a lot of fun at Dreyer's Ice Cream, and we're growing nicely. We weren't painting the image that we thought ultimately was going to happen. We never talked to them about being a national company, but we said, look, I think we said we'll sell you like 10%. I don't remember. It's been a long time I looked it up, but we'll sell you a 10% interest in Dryers if you will stand still for 10 years, not buy another share, not do anything. I think we even gave them one board seat. So they said they'd be, and they were losing a lot of money. A lot of their novelty businesses is that they were selling in the ice cream industry. And we said, by the way, we noticed that you're losing your rear end in the novelty business. We'd be happy to take that over for you and save your rear end. And they said, that'd be great. So that bought us another 10 years. And eventually they became more serious. And that led to our agreeing on we would settle on a price. If they would give us 3 more years, we would settle on a multiple of earnings. Whatever our multiple of earnings might be at the end of those 3 years, they would be willing to pay us, 25 times those earnings. And they said they'd be happy to do that. And so that bought us another 3 years. We finished growing. We ended up growing the company. We were in about 85% of the country. During those 3 years, we were still struggling in New York, but that finally bloomed. So Gary and I very quickly realized that Nestle and/or Unilever were going to be knocking our doors. Let's go hire an attorney and let's figure out how we can successfully stiff arm this as long as we possibly can. We knew if they, if we weren't in the middle of some kind of agreement, standstill agreement with them, we knew they just simply go public on a Monday morning and announce to the world that they wanted to buy Dreyer's ice cream, and that would have been the end of it. So it was fun.
Wow, that's very interesting that you almost tried to push them away for such a long time. I didn't even know that story. That's really cool.
It was a $3 billion company when they bought it.
Wow, that's insane. Congratulations. That's that 1 million to 3 billion. I guess it goes to show that the culture and everything. I
stayed at work for 3 months afterwards and left.
Oh, interesting.
The new CEO that they appointed was a very pleasant guy, but
very interesting. Elizabeth, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to ask a follow-up of I guess what was the goal of, I guess, kind of delaying it? Was it just so that you guys would be a bigger company, and also just that you were enjoying working there, or kind of what was the reasoning for kind of wanting to delay selling?
We just knew that if we didn't reach a decision with them that involved delaying it, that they could come after us. When we were initially having those very first stories, and we were only in the San Francisco Bay Area and headed down, towards LA, we weren't big enough for them to get angry with. They weren't. So by offering them that 10-year delay was not asking them to walk on water. It was a relatively comfortable. We weren't that big yet. They were much bigger than we were, and so we felt that they would get sucked into or would be comfortable with that kind of arrangement. So we had no choice. Once they knocked on our door and we said, don't talk to us for 2 months or 2 years, stand still for 2 years. We knew we had to go to them with something more that was bigger than that and longer than that. And so we had no choice. But we got to know them, and we became friends enough that they were comfortable with continuing to have a partnership with us. We completely exploded their business that was falling apart in Northern and Southern California in the novelty business, and they were obviously very excited about that. So they had every reason to continue to let's stay close to Rick and Gary, and let's see how this works over time.
Very cool. Tamir, did you have another question?
Yeah. I was just wondering, like, what do you think externally made Dreyer's ice cream like take off? I know internally you mentioned the culture was a big deal, but do you think it was like just a good product, or the way you guys built the brand, or a mix of both, or what?
Oh, it was the way. It was the way. What's his name? Built the brand himself. I mean, he had a little tiny plant down near Lake Merritt. Little tiny plant. I mean, it's about the size of one of your rooms. It's a little tiny plant. So they made great ice cream. He knew what he was doing. He knew the difference between pretty good ice cream, very good ice cream, and world class. He knew how to do that. And to buy the equipment and train the people to make world class ice cream was really pretty easy. So it technically wasn't, reinventing the automobile industry. It was pretty simple. And in those days, his one-man show, he could sell ice cream to grocers by just knocking on their stores. One of the things that we discovered that he taught us, and we had to learn in our growth across the country, was that when we entered new markets, the big grocers didn't want to talk to us, again, because I told you they wanted us to sell our ice cream through their warehouse. And we knew we couldn't do that. And if we ever did that once to one grocer, other grocers would just come pounding on us to, threaten us to leave or kick us out of the stores if we didn't. So that, they sold ice cream by going to little independent grocers, in Piedmont and Montclair and Oakland, and, and they sold their ice cream, and with no money behind it, mom and dad bought a pint of Dreyer's ice cream, and they discovered, wow, this is really good. I mean, this is really good. And so it was just word of mouth that happened slowly but surely. If you were to start a company with some brand and you just went to stores to sell your new water polo equipment stuff, and it just starts to sell because it's just simply better than everybody else's. And so that's the way the business began to grow. When we bought Dreyer's, they literally had one local Safeway that enjoyed having the product. It had developed a reputation in the Bay Area, the East Bay area, enough that the Safeway stores here in the immediate East Bay area wanted it in their stores. And they were such a small item that they probably just as soon not have it in their warehouse anyway, and just let Dreyer sell it. So it was a simple product. It was world class, unquestionably, and it was in a neat little, attractive little container, simple to read and fun to use. And mom and grandma loved it. And it just started to grow. We made it a bigger deal. When we had our Rouse salesman going to the grocery stores and making sure that that he or she had the flavors that neighborhood wanted, the difference in selection of flavor selection. I mean, there are some flavors you can't give away in the East Bay, and over the Christmas holidays that you sell like crazy, and places like Orinda, Lafayette, and New York.
Also, did you guys find any like seasonality with selling ice cream? Like maybe more in the summer picked up, or
a little bit. It was to a certain extent. More significantly, it was by flavors. There were some flavors that were very popular at Christmas time, or from the middle of October into the Christmas holidays. And so there were some flavors that were just very appealing, that we wouldn't necessarily have all year long, but that mom and dad, grandma and grandpa liked. I forgot now what the flavor was. There was a flavor in Chicago, and it went up to Michigan and Wisconsin and whatever. There was a flavor there that was sold like crazy from October 1st to January 15th, and then the fellow who ran our ice cream plant, our business in Chicago, kept asking me if we could have that flavor for those 3 months. And our plant tried to avoid it. That wasn't exactly in the spirit of the Upside Down organization, all that, but our plant, our big plant which is in the South Bay, it's not there anymore, said he couldn't do it. So the next year, the same guy who worked for us, the manager who worked for us forever, he asked for like 1 million gallons, and he would pay for it up front, and he wouldn't ask for another one, and he'll just sell that. And so we said, that's fine if we can count on that. You're as you sell it, or we're not going to go in the hole over this. So it was 1 million gallons the first year, and then it was 1.5 million the second year. And people in Chicago and Michigan are sort of strange people. They like it.
Interesting. Thanks.
Wow, these have been great questions, guys. I know we're cutting it short here on time. We only have a couple minutes left. I guess one of the things that I always like to do to wrap up these meetings is ask you, Rick, what is some of your best advice for all of these college students, if you have any?
Keep playing water polo. Keep swimming. I think you guys are at the middle point of a few of the most exciting years in your lives. I mean, what you're doing to go to the University of California, Berkeley, to have Carol Chris as the chancellor. I'm very close to Carol. She's unbelievable. To have Jim Knowlton as the athletic director, to have what's going on at Berkeley, and to be a student there is going to be something that you're going to carry with you for the rest of your life. Some of you may go to graduate school afterwards, and that's nice too, but it'll be from the University of California at Berkeley. And you should be very, very proud of yourselves, really proud of yourselves. And then start to poke away at what the adventure might look like afterwards. It might be a first job, as I suggested, in the finance business, because that was very informative and a lot of fun, and they paid me. And you don't have to work for yourself if you don't want to. I mean, I just discovered that I had to. I had no choice. But I think most people as successful as you guys have been at Berkeley will discover 15 years from now that you'll be telling a story to someone about how successful you are then. And you'll be very, very proud of it. You'll be very, very, very proud of it.
That's great. Thank you so much for that advice, Rick. I'll make sure all these guys keep doing what they're doing. Thank you, everyone, for coming out today. I know it's 7 o'clock and you guys have busy lives. And then thank you, Rick, for coming out. Really appreciate it. I hope to chat with you soon. And yeah, thank you guys all for coming out. Go Bears.
Go Bears.
Go Bears.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
You.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you.